to our loyal BBN listeners like you. Welcome to the show.
And today we're taking our first show on the road. We're live on site at the inaugural How to Boston While Black Summit at the Westin Copley Place. We are here on the second day of a 3-day event of workshops, panels, and experiences to align Boston's Black leaders, community, and our allies on the solutions and strategies to create a city we all want to live in. We have a number of guests who are participating in this week's program. Discuss the week's agenda.
We have something to celebrate as well, right?
We have something to celebrate as well, right?
We are celebrating the launch of The Emancipator. Amber and I are the Emancipators co-editors in chief, and we launched our site on Monday. The Emancipator's Revival and Reimagining the first abolitionist newspaper for a new day. Our goal is to reframe the conversation on racial justice and infuse it with context and perspective. Our website at theemancipator.org. Our website is at theemancipator.org, or follow us at _emancipator on all platforms. Got questions during the show? We're here for it. Ask us on Twitter using hashtag Black News Hour.
And for more content like this, or to subscribe to the Black News Hour newsletter, you can visit globe.com/Black News Hour.
Black News Hour.
So Black News Hour is a proud sponsor of the 26th American Black Film Festival, an experience like no other, bringing together Black culture enthusiasts, artists, executives, and filmmakers from around the world for 5 days of screenings, talk events, exclusive parties, and high-powered networking. So join them this June, live in person or virtually. Visit abff.com for more information.
If you're just tuning in, good morning from Black News Hour. I'm Deborah Douglas. Our first segment today features Sheena Collier.
Sheena Collier is a super connector, convener, and planner with over 15 years of experience in community organizing, partnership building, strategic event planning, and program development.
As founder and CEO of the
Collier Connection,
she designs
innovative diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and events to help companies engage employees, customers, and suppliers of color. And in 2020, Sheena founded Boston While Black, the first membership network for Boston-based Black professionals, entrepreneurs, and students who are seeking connection and community. So Sheena, thank you so much for joining us today and kicking off the show with us here at your summit.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
So, first I wanted to, so many people know about Boston While Black. It's been incredible, but I really wanted to get back to that moment that you launched. And what was it that brought you to that point? I mean, you've been here in Boston since grad school? So that's what, 18 years? So Boston really must have changed for you over the years in that time period. But talk to me just about the moment that was that shift of, I need to create this.
Yeah, it was actually when I moved here 18 years ago, I had this experience of not feeling a sense of belonging, not knowing how to navigate both at school, where I was at Harvard, but also through the city. And I didn't have the solution yet, but that was the time when I knew that I had to step out of my comfort zone and start to create my own community that I was looking for. I did it in many informal ways over a decade and a half, but what really drove me to actually launch Boston While Black was I kept hearing the same story from other people, and over time it didn't seem like it was necessarily getting better for others. He would connect with others who were just moving to Boston, who were having some of the same challenges. I'm only one person, and so though I really get life from being able to connect people, I knew that I needed to take what I was learning and be able to amplify it and multiply it. So I wanted to create, and there are many connectors and many people who have figured this out. So I created this community so that people could access the network I had built, but also the network that 100 people have built throughout their time in Boston to be able to figure out how to navigate the city. And then we launched in the middle of a pandemic 2 years ago.
Why not?
And so
You could have told me
figure out how to create community of belonging virtually.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. You talk a lot about belonging. So I would like you to define the qualities of belonging and how do you know when you belong?
Listen, this is like a school session. I would say for me, belonging is one being able to be in spaces where you know that you are being celebrated and not just tolerated. I think being able to have your experiences, your culture highlighted and valued. And a lot of times what happens here, people feel like they're in spaces they may have access to, but are they really wanted there? Are they really valued there? And so they don't have the sense. They don't look around and see the things that tell them that we want you there. I think it's really a lot of it is a feeling that people have or don't have.
Yeah, when did you have that sense of integration? Like, okay, I belong here.
I felt it many times throughout my life. I feel it a lot now. Created the community that I want. But I would say what I'm trying to get Boston Black to feel like is when I was at Spelman. So
I went to a historically Black college, a women's college.
Was able to have this amazing opportunity, be around people that look like me all the time, who had shared and who were celebrating my growth and celebrating trying to create that same type of vibe or energy where we're able to
Be around people who understand the challenges that we are facing and celebrate our successes together.
That's beautiful.
Ayanna Presley
gave this beautiful quote about Boston While Black, saying that it played a role in our healing, while we were living through the pandemic and in this fight for racial equity. She said, I think Boston While Black, she thanks you for standing in the gap. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, we launched during the pandemic, and Boston While Black had been conceptualized pre-pandemic. So we already had the momentum and we built this waiting list. And then March 2020 or even February 2020 happened, and I actually was going to shut it down. I felt like, I'm a very in-person person. I like to create community person, so I didn't know how to move forward. But the people on our waiting list made me keep moving forward. They said that they did. Not only were they having this challenge in Boston, but now we're all working from home. Some people for the first time, and they didn't really know how to kind of have a work and a home life working from home. And we were all in the twilight zone. We were trying to figure out what was going on and what this pandemic was. And so what Congresswoman Presley is referring to is being able to create this safe space for Black people during one of the hardest times, definitely in my lifetime, the pandemic, and then on top of that, the murders that followed that, and all the unrest that we were all feeling, and really trauma that we were experiencing. And so us being able to have this safe space, albeit through Zoom, where people were able to create community, was just really saved a lot of people during 2020.
Well, we're here
at the Boston While Black Summit. We were able to go to your family reunion last summer, which was amazing. That was how you all celebrated your first year anniversary, bringing people together on Lawn D. That was awesome. Tell us about the summit and why. What is the goal?
Yeah. So the summit is called How to Boston While Black. And essentially that's what it is. It's a how-to. I took my own experience of learning how to find my tribe, learning how to grow my network, learning how to navigate the city, and having the spaces to have fun, and was able to package that into a 3-day experience for people. And so what people are getting while they're here is hearing from Black people across the city who have been able to actually do that. In a number of ways. So professionally, personally, civically, socially. And it's an opportunity for us to really say, what is the formula to learning how to Boston While Black? Which I honestly think is the formula to learning how to any city. But how can we give that to people so that they choose to stay here? This is somewhere that they want to be, and they really can have a thriving life while they're in Boston.
I read a profile about you written by Janae Osterheld. at the Boston Globe of A Beautiful Resistance fame. And she paired you with a quote from Audre Lorde that said, "Without community, there is no liberation." Speak on that a little bit.
I believe that Black people are the definition of community. You know, I think that everything we do is in community. I think that I know the way that I grew up, you know, I was part of a neighborhood. I was part of a community that raised me, my teachers, the other people around me, you know, along with my parents and family. And, you know, we oftentimes adopt this kind of individualistic view that we're able to move forward, build, grow, thrive by ourselves. But really for us, particularly for Black people to get what I think a lot of us are seeking is really to be seen and our humanity to be valued and to be liberated and be free, that we have to do that together.
That's beautiful. Thank you for taking time to talk to us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Before our next segment, we'll have a quick message. On May 12th, Big Sister Boston presents the return of a beloved Boston tradition, the Project Role Model Fashion Show at the Fairmont Copley Plaza, hosted by WBZ's Lisa Hughes. Celebrated local designers will unveil their latest fashion lines worn by notable Bostonians alongside big and little sisters. The Boston Globe is a proud media partner. We hear that Sheena Collier will participate along with the Globe's own Peggy Berg. For more information, please visit bigsister.org.
And if you're just tuning in, thanks for joining Black News Hour. I'm Amber Payne here with Deborah Douglas. And today we're going to be talking to Kristin Pope coming up in just a moment. And before we bring Kristin on, let's talk about the Emancipator.
Yeah, let's talk about the Emancipator.
And what we launched with this week.
Yeah, we've been cooking this up for a while.
So we launched with a series on solving the Black wealth gap.
Because we can solve the Black wealth gap.
And that is also really the orientation of the series, not just giving you the problems, but we can solve it. So how do we solve it? Here are some ideas and solutions and incredibly visionary people who have ideas on that, right?
Absolutely. You know, we don't want to cover the communities that we serve, the Black community, Brown community, Indigenous, all of the intersections thereof, from what we call a deficit frame, defining people by the one bad thing that happened to them. We want to asset frame the communities that we cover. And that is looking at people and the fullness thereof, who they purpose themselves to be when they get up, to be better than they were the next day.
Yes, I love the asset framing that we're doing and kind of changing the narrative, empowering people to tell their own stories. One of our pieces is on student debt, and I'm really hoping that people will read this story. Student debt, there's a ripple effect
after you take out these loans. There's a ripple effect on your life. You take out these loans. So many Black Americans take out the loans. Their parents are helping them. It really actually sets back a whole family. It can impact, their ability to gain credit, their ability to, kind of grow and thrive in their career. And Kimberly Atkins Store, she is the one who is spearheading the series for us. Telling the story of Aaron Mitchell from Morehouse. You ever wonder what happened to those Morehouse students?
Aaron was part of the class of 2019 who had his student loan debt forgiven by billionaire Robert Smith. So he knows what the other side looks like. He was facing a huge amount of student debt until this resolution came into his life. He grew up, his mom raised him, they would negotiate over McDonald's money.
Right. She would go to McDonald's and
Right.
say,
She would go to McDonald's and say, I have $5. I need to feed my children. What can you all do? And he says that was like the ultimate masterclass in negotiating. And that's what people do
on Wall Street.
On Wall Street. That's what people do when they're making deals every day. And I love that anecdote of what he learned.
And he
from his
says
mom.
now, because his loans have been forgiven, his mother is managing a portfolio now, not McDonald's money. So I love that.
So now we're going to tell you more about the Emancipator and some of the incredible stories we've launched with. But here joining us at the table is Kristin Pope. Deborah, want to do the intro? Drum roll,
Absolutely.
please.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kristin. She's a speaker at this year's event. She's also a member of Boston While Black and named the Queen of Agility and honored as one of 9 women who impacted the world of business by Black Enterprise Magazine in 2021. Kristin is a multi-hyphenate visionary. She's a founder, a speaker, an award-winning television journalist, and a multimedia strategist. Kristin leads social media at Harvard University in the Division of Continuing Education while running her own award-winning multimedia company, Pope Productions Incorporated. In 2021, Pope Productions, Inc. was awarded the Boston Celtics Power Forward Grant. Kristin was honored in 2020 as a top 50 most influential business person of color in the Boston suburbs. Thank you for being with us this morning, Kristin. Let's get started.
Thank you for having me. Y'all made me feel so good.
Intro like that.
That should be your entry music.
My affirmation every morning when I wake up.
Yes.
Yes.
It's great to have a fellow journalist with us at the table. It's great to meet you and hear what we want to hear about your production company. But I want to talk about the Queen of Agility phrase that has been one of your titles. What does that mean? How are you the Queen of Agility?
Thank you so much for asking that. The Queen of Agility came from pivoting honestly in the pandemic. As we talked about, I am a journalist. I was a former television reporter and anchor. And if I can just be completely honest, my career did not pan out exactly the way I presumed. At the end of my last contract, it ended, and there was no real path forward. There's only so many stations in Boston, and the truth be told is I couldn't get a job anywhere. And so I had to make a decision. I had already had this production company and I was doing some work, but then it pivoted me, it moved me to actually take it more seriously and delve into the work that I love doing, which is coaching journalists, helping journalists get on air. I created a curriculum called the On Air Academy, which I licensed to different businesses. And it just, everything just changed. And so I took the opportunity in the pandemic as exactly what it was, an opportunity to reinvent my career as a journalist.
Yeah. Can we talk about how you had started your production company, even though you had a full-time job? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people have ideas or side hustles, or they want to kind of get that side hustle going, but you're crazed, you're busy, you're a mom. You're trying to grow in your career as a TV journalist, but I think it's really important to hear about that moment of like, I'm going to also have my production company. I'm going to start this. What was that about?
I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, business outside of your 9 to 5 is about freedom. It's about having options. It's about creating something that's bigger than yourself. And for me, that looked like a legacy. As a journalist in a newsroom, I always found that our stories either fell to the bottom or didn't even make the air. And so I first started my production company as a way to amplify more stories about people of color.
That's relatable.
Right? That's kind of why we're here, right? And so that was the first entree, I should say, into production life for me was, how do we get these stories told? Well, just go tell them. You have the power, you have the ability, you have the know-how and the creativity to go tell those stories. And part of that for me, I started doing that before I became a mother. So then when I became a mother, all of this became so much more significant because I was like, oh, but sweetheart, you can do this too. Because I'm a mom, I'm a girl mom right now. So my thought was, I'm providing now an example. I'm providing an example and I get to create what I want to see. And I get to do that in front of the eyes of somebody else who will then, I want her to say what, like, I always think, we look up to all of these wonderful people, but I was like, I want my daughter to say, my mama was my hero. My mother was the woman that I looked up to because she had limitless, potential and limitless mindset to just go forward and create what you wanted to see.
In your coaching sessions, it looks like you have a cadre of people flocking to you for your training and your services. So tell us about what people are needing and craving, and how they need to polish and finish.
Mhm. So I have about two different tracks of coaching. The first one is grew out of need. I myself went to a business coach and she said, you have a business where people come to you. If you notice that people always come to you for something, that is where you have a community to serve. And so people would always come to me looking for coaching about, of course, how do I get on air? How do I become a television news journalist? And it grew to the point where I was like, I am usually a much more intimate coach, one-on-one, but I want to cover this entire range of people. So I created this curriculum and I put it online called the On Air Academy. And so not only were people interested, but businesses became interested. And so then I got the opportunity to license it to businesses. Well, then on top of that, then it wasn't just people, who were out of college or pivoting careers who wanted to know how to present well on air or secure a job on air, but it was entrepreneurs. Then it was entrepreneurs who said, well, hey, I want more media for my business, or I want to know how to present better on air. Can you show me how to do that? So it has continued to grow and expand, and I'm grateful.
Right. So there's a range of clients you're working with. And I think knowing that you're working with young people, I noticed you're working with Harlem Children's Zone students, which is awesome.
Amazing.
Can you just talk about just that, the power of story, and because I can tell that is central to you, and empowering and entrusting people to tell their own stories?
It is so necessary to own your own story. Like, everything in our world revolves around a story, a narrative. We're always telling a narrative. And the thing that I learned early, I would say in college, was the power of the media. That the media is one of the most powerful entities we have. And the media shapes how people think. And how you think is how you feel. And so we as media professionals have the ability with our narrative, which is why it was so important to have all the stories at the table, because if you're only telling one story, then people think one way. But we have this ability to tell narratives, and people, and so there's the narrative of the human story, which helps us to connect with one another. But then there's your own narrative that's so empowering. And it's not just I am that these are my titles, but the narrative that you give yourself helps you to think that you can be more. It helps you to think that, oh, but I could start a production company because of the narrative that I'm telling myself. And so there are just so many ways to approach it. And I am pretty obsessed with storytelling. I'm pretty obsessed with storytelling because that's our power. That's our power. That's our ownership, is that we get to tell our story the way that we envision it. And if we don't like it, we get to change it.
You are our people.
That resonates so much, because I always like to say that the stories we tell becomes the world we live in.
Yes.
I'm interested in some of those stories that that you were able to break through and tell anyway, those transformational tales. What's the story that you really worked hard to push to get out into the world, and you felt like this cosmic sense of completion once you got it out there?
Oh my gosh. It was probably my first really big story, my first documentary, quote unquote. I was a reporter in Abilene, Texas, y'all. Y'all nodding your head like you know where that is.
Heard
I
of
was
it.
in Mississippi.
That's my sister. She know. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I started in Abilene, Texas, and I pushed and pushed to get this particular story told. This was a story about immigrants. Abilene, Texas has a really, I would say, bustling immigrant population. And they're coming from all different places. I think their immigration hub had like 300 different countries represented. This particular representation was from the Congo, and many war-torn refugees are coming from the Congo to Abilene, Texas. Like, who would have ever thought? And so at the time, the schools had on the books this rule that if you were from another country, if you were transferring into the school, you had to be able to pass their standardized test like within a year, the math and the English portion. Now, many of these kids were coming and could speak 3 to 4 to 5 languages, but they could not, they were learning English. And English was very difficult. And they could do math because why? Math is a universal language. But it was the English portion of this test that they were being held back for because they could not pass the proficiency. And I was like, this just isn't right. This isn't fair. Like, would you take an American kid, plop them in Africa, and then expect for them to know the language after a year? It's not right. So I started to work with the councilwoman, the councilmen, all sorts of people to just say, listen, we need to talk about this. We ended up being able to tell this story of a young woman who at the time was 16 years old. She was so frustrated because she's like, I failed it once. And that was the other thing. You can only fail it so many times. So she failed it once and she was so frustrated. And we got to tell her story. And this didn't happen while I was there, but after I left, they changed that rule. They changed that rule and gave
Wow.
them more time. And I would say that that was probably my first real understanding of the power of journalism and the power of our stories, to just tell one story that then changes her life and everybody who comes along with her.
I think you probably saved her life. I mean, when you look at it over the course of time,
I was at least a part. I mean, at least got to play a part, which is what I love about the work that I do, because on another story, I have these tremendous and amazing stories of people that I've coached who, I got to tell y'all this one story. Let me just tell you
All
this
right,
one
let's
story.
hear it. Let's hear it.
This woman came to me on Instagram, because that's a new email. She came to me on Instagram and she said, would you consider coaching me? And initially I told her no. And I told her no because I felt like I was at my bandwidth. And I'm telling y'all, the Holy Spirit said, go back and tell her yes. And I went back and I told her yes. And I coached her for the next 6 months. She came to me with no television experience. She is a mother of 4 in a completely different career,
Wow.
married, beautiful, successful, married, but said that this was always something that she wanted to do. And so I coached her. She did just about everything I recommended. 4 years later, she's an anchor.
4 years.
She's an anchor in her 4th market, y'all. And so that story of the young woman who could now pass the test, could now take it as many times as she needed to, get the help that she needed. This woman who is now living her dream, I get to be a fabric, just a piece of their successes. And that for me is life. That's life.
that's beautiful.
That's life.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love how you're teaching people and empowering them to make change in their newsrooms. Because I know, well, all 3 of us have been in newsrooms where we have pushed hard for those stories. We've been told no. We've been told that's not our audience. And that really gets frustrating. And you want to just go out and do your own thing. And I love that you're able to transfer that. What else would you just say to the entrepreneur who wants to give up?
Oh, I think I was you last week. The one thing I can say is that when you take the step of faith, everything conspires in your direction to support that goal. And those obstacles are there to fortify your resolve. When I come up against obstacles and then I overcome them, I am that much more convinced that this is what I should be doing. And not only that, hold on to those wins. You will get wins you're going to get a win every day. These wins that I have, that I would say, I mean, they're wins for people, but they're also my wins. These wins help me to remind me, like, this is why you do what you do. This is why you do what you do. Do you want to see more of her? Do you want to see more of her? You got to keep going, girl. You got to keep going. And it's bigger than you. So we get in our own way. We get in our own head when we boil it down to us. And we are so small. But when we think like, wow, I'm a part of the bigger ecosphere, like there's someone whose legacy now, I get to be tied to her legacy forever. Forever. That's cemented in her future forever. That will live past me. So always remember that it's always bigger than you, and that when you get those wins, your legacy, you're cementing your legacy every time you support and help somebody else reach their goals.
I love that.
That's beautiful. So we're here at the Boston While Black Summit, and you want to hear more about your panel. Tell us what we can expect.
I am so grateful, thankful to Sheena Collier, first of all, for doing this, for creating this space for all of us, for entrusting me with her panel and with this topic. I am on the transplant, the planting roots in Boston transplant. I'm not natively from here. I grew up in the Midwest. My husband and I moved here almost 7 years ago, and we have the privilege to say that we are thriving here. You know, people ask me, they're like, what's Boston like? You like Boston?
We get that too.
all the
Yeah.
time.
You must really like Boston. You moved to Boston.
How is
Like,
it?
I know what you're getting.
Right. I love the side eye. Like, do you really like it? Blink twice, you know, if you like it or don't. And so, but the truth of the matter is my family is thriving here, and it is large in part to community. We moved here from New York, and I had one very specific prayer amidst others, but this one trumped, I would say, all of them. And it was for community. It was for community. We grow and we thrive in community. And we have found that here in many different ways, socially, politically, professionally, spiritually, physically, we have found community. And that, I believe, has not only made it so possible that we could thrive, but that we could help other people. And we're creating our own narrative. We've made this space, Boston, our own. And so I hope that I can encourage other people who may be struggling with that to do the same. And if they have found it, to keep expanding. Like, this for me is an opportunity to expand. There's no limit. We just keep going.
I'm just curious because I'm a transplant from Chicago. So what is like the first thing I should do?
Okay. The first thing, and I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago, so we got even more to talk about. But the first thing that I did when we moved here was I found my sorority sisters. I found the journalism organizations. We found a church. I plugged into media. I went for all of my interests, all of the things that make me me, and I sought them out. And I said, here, let me plug in first. That's the easiest way to get, to plug into a place is, what are the things that already exist about you, and go find your people. Start there, go find your people.
That's great.
As a mom, I'm also a mom I think our daughters are close to the same age. Any just tips for Black moms? I'm new here too. I came from New York. I'm from the DC area, but after 17 years in New York, I'm here in Boston. I'm also trying to just get my family up and running, and we're trying to find our people.
Oh, we have so much to talk about. So much to talk about, especially being the mother. I'll be honest with you, the mother of a brown child. And what that means, that's a whole other conversation. But as a mom in Boston, finding other mothers who have been moms longer than me, other mothers who are right where I am, and then other mothers who are coming along, that has been paramount to our success. I really struggled, I'll be honest with you, when we first moved here, and I called my mom like, I'm struggling. I'm having a hard time digging in, and I'm an extrovert. I'm a connector by nature. And so when I found it to be hard at times, I found myself struggling. And my mom said, you know what, every time me and your dad moved around, we had children. It's so easy to plug in when you have children because you got to find networks for your kids. But that's not always the case. So I would say that finding moms, and now that we know we're mamas, I'm gonna get you all hooked up.
All right. We're connected now.
Yes, we're connected now.
Thank you so much for that. What else did we want to get to today? As my producer, are we going to keep going? We're going to keep with Kristin. Excellent. Okay. No, we're moving on. Oh, Kristin, we have to move on. I'm sorry, but we're not moving on. We're going to keep going. We're going to connect it. But thank you so much for being with us, and we look forward to seeing your panel here at the summit.
This was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Okay. So let me just read my ad here. On June 11th and 12th, the Globe Live returns to the Paramount stage for a unique, adventurous, and fun night of nonfiction storytelling from the Boston Globe's journalists. So come and celebrate the Globe's 150th anniversary alongside the writers, storytellers, and personalities that carry on the great tradition of covering and convening with the Boston community. For more information, visit globe.com/Globe Live. And Deborah, I hear you're going to be there at Globe Live.
Absolutely, I will, with a very special person, Amber
So we're going to be bringing on our next guest shortly. But Deborah, I wanted you to talk about one of the unique stories that we launched this week.
Oh,
There was a
yes.
comic.
So, people consume information in different ways. It's not always reading something on the webpage or watching a video, although those produced by you, Amber, are the best that I've seen. We have a illustrated comic by Josh Neufeld, illustrated and reported comic of the story of Indiana professor in his journey to get his student loan debt forgiven. He almost gave up. And he kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and he finally got loads of debt forgiven, and it's illustrated very well in this panel. And one of my favorite panels is where he's holding up a row of checks because he actually had overpaid into the student loan system. And so after his debt was forgiven, I think he got 14 checks sent back to him. So we're engaging with this issue right now in the news cycle, and it's so great to see illustrated on the page on the Emancipator website, actually, theemancipator.org, the story of Professor Samuel Altman's journey to student loan debt forgiveness.
Yes. So we will be doing more comics. We're doing all kinds of different formats to meet people where they are. Please check out theemancipator.org. But now, we're going to bring on our next guest. I'm so happy and excited to meet Crystal Cornegay. But first, you're listening to the Black News Hour, and we are broadcasting live from the Westin Copley Hotel at the first Boston While Black Summit, hosted by Boston While Black. Joining us today is Crystal Cornegay, who currently serves as Executive Director of Mass Housing, which lends over $1 billion annually to produce and preserve affordable rental housing and create home ownership opportunities for low and moderate income borrowers. And under Ms. Cornegay's leadership, Mass Housing has launched a highly successful down payment assistance program, secured over $80 million to expand its workforce housing initiative, and developed a nationally recognized program for home ownership production in communities of color. And before joining Mass Housing, Ms. Cornegay served as the Baker-Polito administration's Undersecretary for Housing and Community Development. So thank you, Crystal.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Amber, for.
Well, you're very welcome. And I wanted to talk first. You're here, you're this expert. I mean, you have an urban planning background. I was very startled by a recent WBUR analysis about mortgage lending in Boston. And it found that lenders were denying mortgages to Black applicants at 3 times the rate of white applicants. Home ownership is part of the so-called American dream, right? But talk to us about the issues that Black and Brown Bostonites are facing. You are really at the ground level, meeting with and talking with and hearing about the challenges. And in the background, you're concocting these ways of how to fix it.
I don't know about fix it, but I will say to you, I try to look at things at both sides, right? And so, yes, it is true that Black and Brown folks are denied mortgages, but that's not a new thing at a rate. That's not a new thing. And then the other side of it is like, we need to get ready, right? It's like, we got to do the things that we need to do in order to not be denied, right? And so then once you get to that point, then there are, if you're ready and you're denied, right, then there are places that you can go and do things about. What we're trying to do at Mass Housing is just address the issues as they exist, so to speak, right? And so as opposed to talking about where people should live, we're looking at the data and say where people do live. And we're doing construction of new homes, quality homes in places where Black and Brown people actually live, where they actually buy, where they're actually welcome. And then we're thinking about what are the products that we can put forth to help people get into this very hot real estate market.
Well, talk to me a little bit about getting ready. What does that entail?
Getting ready entails, credit, right? It's like at the heart of everything is credit. Now we can argue that it's not a fair system. No system in America is fair to Black and Brown people, right? It's like, but it's not a fair system. And we can both work to create a better system, but we got to deal with the system we have now as well, right? And being financially healthy with your credit, like, is a lot of things, brings you a lot of value that isn't just about buying a home, right? When you go and get a cell phone, they check your credit. When you go and like apply for utilities, they check your credit. And so it's like, get your credit right, and what that means, and make sure you understand what that means. And getting it right isn't necessarily like you should have pristine 800, but like really spend some time understanding what's the difference between 600 and 640, and how actually easy it is to get from 6 to 640 and that kind of thing.
It's funny you should mention that because Kimberly Atkins Store actually reported our debut series of reported columns on solving the Black wealth gap, the racial wealth gap. And she talks about solutions to addressing the credit reporting system. But if we're engaging with it as it stands now, you remind me of a long time ago when in another lifetime when I was married. My ex-husband and I wondered, are we ready to buy some property? And we brought over a mortgage expert to the house, and he checked our credit on site. And it turns out that from my own personal report, that I benefited from years of saying no to signing up for stored credit cards. All those years, when you're at Macy's or whatever,
I know, right?
get the 20%
I
off.
had all those gaps.
I said no every time. I wasn't trying to be smart or anything. I'm like, I don't really need that. So no. And it turns out that was in my favor. And so I'm wondering, is there any other advice like that you could offer people?
That is great advice, right? And but the other thing is like, just pay your bills on time. It's okay. And here's the deal: if you can't, call and let people know, because they'd rather have 50 cents on a dollar than no cents on a
So
dollar.
that actually works. Call and try to
Just say,
negotiate. Just
I got a different situation. Can I like do something in the meantime? Right? Like that is like, think about credit worthiness as not just like this black box of somebody over there. It's like people just want their money back. It's okay, right? Like you want your money back when you lend it to your cousin, you want your money back, right? And so it's just, if you think about it as the same kind of thing, and it's not scary, and it's not, kind of it doesn't mean that you're a bad person, right? It just means that, like life happens.
So when you were developing this program for mass housing, can you just talk to us about the structural barriers to entry for first-time homeowners or first-generation homeowners? What was it that you saw in that typical structure that you said, nope, we can dismantle that. Nope, we can break that in half.
I'm not saying. Trust me when I tell you, people ask me this all the time about dismantling. This is not about dismantling, right? Um, this is about, I don't have a history of working in government. And so um, I was fortunate enough to meet Governor Baker when he was on the campaign trail the first time. And, my story is like, we met and fell in love. And so, but the reality is like, we have so far to go, right? And so what we're trying to do is like, what is the first step that we can take to get us to the ultimate goal, right? Given what the market is, because it's a fluid environment we live in, right? So the market is not the same all the time, and right, like you're not the same all the time. And so we're in this environment. We thought of this program when we were at historic low interest rates, right? And so we thought about, okay, well, areas to that. Well, like if you walk in the house, you walk into the sale and you've got like little to no money down, like how can we help that? So we came up with a DPA program. But we also realized that there's no stock, right? That people kind of really want to buy in the places where people are buying. And so we thought about both a production program, which we call Commonwealth Builder, as well as a down payment assistance program. And we just keep modifying that to be able to deal with what is going on in the marketplace.
How does Commonwealth Builder work?
Commonwealth Builder is basically a subsidy to a developer to write down to get to affordable sales prices, but it's geographically based. We looked at the data. Where are people of color buying? We looked at the data, and so we limited geographically where we were going to put this money, and that's sort of what Commonwealth Builder, not sort of, that is exactly what Commonwealth Builder is meant to do.
Could you talk a little more about down payment assistance and what that looks like?
Sure. Oh, we're starting this, like we've had I want to say like 3 or 4 iterations of this program, and so most recently, what we realized is like sales prices are crazy, right? And so what we are able to do right now, what we're saying, our latest iteration is that you can get up to 10% of the purchase price, right? Um, Up to $50,000, right? And so it's like you walk in the door with equity, right? Which is a big thing for people of color because sometimes you can use that equity to do all kinds of other things.
Can you take us also just a little behind the scenes of what you learned when you were working with the administration in your role?
Oh Lord, that I was not meant to work for government. No. Um, what I learned was that when people talk about how hard it is to do things in government, it's true. And that it's not as simple to dismantle. But what I also learned is that when you have a leader like Charlie Baker, who is committed to certain things, like you can advance that in a certain, at a certain level, at a certain pace, in which it's not always true. And so I'm very fortunate to have been able to be part of that administration at that time where they were committed to trying to do things. And it's not always right, right? It's like it's not always right. And so, but it's like it's something. I always tell people like we're so far behind on this issue around the racial home ownership gap. We need all the things, right? And government is very good about like, what is the one thing? It's like there is no one thing. We need all the things. And so it was working for the administration is like being able to do all the things. Like how many things can we do to make this happen?
You talked about building homes and places where people feel welcome and where they belong.
I know.
Um,
Yeah. There is a school of thought that is about how you get to have people be in communities of opportunity, which I'm not debunking that, but I just feel like why isn't where I live a community of opportunity, and how do we turn that into a community of opportunity? And we have this way of being. It's like if you want your kids to go to a good school, you got to move to that community. But I having been one of those folks who went to one of those schools where like you're one of the only people of color, like that's not that creates other kind of psychological problems for a kid, right? And so I'm a big person in which like people live where they want to live, and let's create opportunity where people already live and where they're already buying. And so that's what mass housing is doing in terms of our programs. And lo and behold, what we've learned from the pandemic is those are the same communities in which the pandemic had disproportionately impacted those communities. So let's invest in those communities. So, in the next 100 years or whatever, when we have the next pandemic, maybe it won't be as terrible if we spend some time investing in those places.
Let's hope it's 100 years and
You
not
know,
two.
I'm just like, fingers crossed.
Thank you so much. Crystal Cornegay here, currently serving as Executive Director of Mass Housing. Thank you so much for being with us here. Enjoy the summit, and we'll be looking for you on the
I
stage.
enjoy meeting you.
Thank you.
Well, we are wrapping up our time with you here on the Black News Hour. Thank you all for coming up to join us here. So we're here at the Boston Law Black Summit. We're about to sign off. But Deborah, what do we want to leave people with? We're here, we're Amber
and Deborah,
and Deborah, co-editors in chief of the Emancipator.
We want everybody to go to the Emancipator website, theemancipator.org. And we want you to look at our YouTube channel. We have some powerful videos there. Kimberly Atkins Store actually reported a series of columns on solving the racial wealth gap. And she has a framing video on our site and on YouTube that is really powerful, where she quotes abolitionist Mariah Stewart. And she just really brings you in, just puts you in a mood. And I just really invite you to watch that video. And meet us out in these social media streets. We are everywhere. We're on IG, we're on Twitter. We have a closed Facebook group because we're trying to have an intelligent conversation about how to achieve an anti-racist future. And we invite you into that conversation.
And TikTok.
And TikTok. I'm obsessed.
Well, I'm Amber. Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of Black News Hour. To follow updates for the show, visit globe.com/Black News Hour.
And I'm Deborah. Black News Hour will return on May 13th. Also, please subscribe to the Black News Hour newsletter at bostonglobe.com/BNH.